he said yesterday was as good as he felt on the BMW this season, and the best Friday of a weekend that he's had so far this year. And he certainly thinks that coming into the races that he is the favourite, but he's going to be challenged as well this weekend.
Yes, when I spoke to him yesterday and put it to him that he was the favourite clearly on the evidence of what we'd seen on Friday, he said to me not to expect to anticipate the same kind of margins as last season, that if he was going to go and win this weekend, it would be much closer, much more like Portimao than anything we saw in his dominant winning run in 2024. That's the reality for Top Rack at the moment. The BMW's not where it was.
Yeah, what's been interesting is obviously the heavy braking zone into turn 1. Top Rack's very strong. It's the combination of turn 1, 2, 3 that seems where he's making up a lot of lap time in the first sector. But for him, he's strong then into turn 10 in that sector of the track as well. Alvaro Bautista, we see here, very strong in the middle of the lap. And it's the contrast in styles and strengths of the Ducati and the BMW.
7 third places in 12 races this season for Alvaro Bautista. And the unfortunate reality for him is he just hasn't had the speed of Bulliger or Top Rack. Only beat Top Rack once. That was in Assen, and that was a real nadir for BMW. He's yet to beat Bulliger this season. Lost another 23 points to his teammate and series leader in Cremona. So now at 73 behind. And his focus here has just got to be on closing the gap. 11 seconds in race 1, 9 seconds in race 2 of that Italian round. Latest news from Bimotor, who've now confirmed their rider lineup for 2026. It's an unchanged pairing of Alex Lowes and Axel Bassani. The team emphasised in their announcement that the bike is still in the early stages of development, but that does also mean a real opportunity to work in a growing project for their two riders. Lowes with 5 seasons under his belt on the Kawasaki before the team moved to Bimotor this season. Finished world number 4, remember, in 2024. And Bassani in his second season with the setup has made clear progress with the new machinery. Sits 5 points ahead of teammate Lowes in the championship. So straightforward decision for the team to keep both of them.
Yeah, no surprise to see Bimotor do that, and 2 riders that want to be part of that project as well. Lowes had a crash this morning at the end of the free practice 3 session and came off the last corner. So fast place to come off, but seemed to be come off and be relatively unscathed.
Andrea Iannone also had a final turn crash. That was yesterday in free practice 1, and unfortunately he's out for the rest of the round. 2 fractured toes on his right foot, and an alarming spill for Andrea Iannone, one of several we saw in that FP1 session.
Yeah, and for Iannone, ended up with those couple of fractures in his feet, and it's unfortunate to see him out of action for this weekend. He's been pretty vocal about the run of form that he's been on lately, and just feeling that it's not really down to him, it's down to issues within the team. But he needed to be able to get out on track this weekend to be able to show that. Yeah,
a little bit frustrated trying for all his worth to defend position last time out in Cremona and just come away with something that really was a miserable Dutch round, but did manage to get a 4th place in that race 1 of the Italian round. And it was a race where he was rather holding back the train because he didn't have a lot of pace and didn't have much pace for the remainder of the weekend. And still, more than half of his 2025 points come from the visit to Phillip Island in February. Andrea Locatelli, 4th in the championship, dropped from 3rd in the standings last time out. Difficult Italian round for him. Grid penalty and then a crash in race 1, but didn't have much pace on Sunday either. 7th and 8th, so far cry from his first career win that he managed in Assen. Danilo Petrucci hasn't really been a podium contender since the opening 2 rounds of the season, and passed by Locatelli and Bautista in Assen for 3rd in the World Championship. But he is still in touch with 18 points, the gap in the battle for bronze. And Nosta's been a great venue for him. Took 3 of his first 5 World SBK podiums here in the last 2 Czech rounds. So he will certainly be optimistic this weekend.
What's interesting for the Superpole session is everyone getting out pretty early. You can see Top Rack straight away, the first rider out on track. We've got a harder tyre allocation here this weekend, so it might be where you do a longer stint as well. It mightn't be just that 1 or 2 fast laps. You might see riders going out and doing 3 or 4 fast laps in their stint as well. So we'll see how the lap counter goes for all these riders in this group. But a good opportunity for the riders to build themselves up to speed. I think that's where Jonathan Ray, we can see here in the number 65, will be quite an interesting rider to follow through the course of the session, because we know that he struggled to get the most out of a soft tyre in a qualifying session since he jumped onto that Yamaha. Maybe with the harder allocation here this weekend, it might help him a little bit.
Sam Lowes we saw there a couple of moments ago, back at the venue where last year he suffered a big crash and subsequent shoulder injury. From that round on, he's only scored 13 points in the rest of the season. Big step forward this season, though. He's up in 6th in the championship, ahead of Iannone and Redding, and with his first podium on the bag, in the bag, I should say. Only 2 non-scores, so much more consistent too thus far for Sam Rose.
Yeah, it's been a really strong season so far for those who are past that 1/3 mark, so we've got enough of a form guide to know what to expect from pretty much the entire field at this stage. Lowe's has been able to show, especially over the last 2 rounds with a pole on the front row, that in the Superpole session he really should be able to get something going and give himself another opportunity to be at the front of the field.
Good points hauls from the Hondas last time out. Ikalekwona with a 6th place finish in race 2. Really should have had a 4th place in race 1, but crashed out while well positioned there. Xavi Vierke with his best performance since 2023. 2 5th places and a 7th. So there's potential there for the Hondas, but let's see what they can deliver in the coming rounds as we watch Remy Gardner. And Gardner having a spill yesterday immediately after Andrea Iannone's incident at that final turn.
That's Taz Mack down to turn 2, it looks like, just at the start of the lap. And for Mackenzie, he'll obviously have to come back into the pits after that, get the bike checked out. And that's the risk that you have in a session like this, is that we've seen a lot of incidents through the course of the weekend so far. It's very easy to get caught out by someone else's incident with a yellow flag. That's why it's really important to be able to get in a good fast lap right from the start. And just a point of reference, Toprak's fastest time so far this weekend at 30.9.
Toprak Razgatlioglu, our most recent pole sitter here in Moss, top Superpole here in 2023 on the Yamaha, then last year on the BMW. Of course, 4 previous stagings of the Czech round at this venue. Jonathan Ray, the only other man to have sat on pole, 2 for him with Kawasaki in 2021 and 2022. But no doubt Toprak is the man with the past form here in Moss. He exits the final turn to complete his first flying lap, and it's a 1 minute 30.989. So it's a good effort and in the ballpark for the fastest times in free practice this weekend.
Yeah, a little bit off the pace in the middle sector there for Toprak compared to what he's done so far this weekend. So a lot of margin still to find for him, but a decent lap time to be able to get in right from the start.
Andrea Locatelli less than a 1/10 of a second short of Razgatlioglu. Jonathan Ray's first effort only 4/10 down on Toprak. The margin's generally been greater than that for Jonathan Ray since his return from injury, so that's a decent first effort from Ray. Michael van der Mark on the board. Axel Bassani 3/10 down on Toprak as things stand. Looking elsewhere around the lap, the Honda of Alvaro Bautista making his way through into the 3rd sector. Nicolo Bullica's had this lap deleted, so he'll have to go again next time around. Harder allocation works in his favour in that sense from Pirelli this weekend. Petrucci 3/10 up now after 3 completed sectors. So Danilo Petrucci going great guns once again here in Most. Was 2nd on the grid here in 2023, and that remains his best Superpole effort to date, which he matched in Estoril 2024. 6th on the grid here last year. Danilo Petrucci sliding his way through the final turn, was 3/10 up on Toprak after 3 completed sectors. He's 2/10 up on Toprak after 4 completed sectors. It's provisional pole for Danilo Petrucci, leading Razgatlioglu, but Toprak's on for another lap here, and Razgatlioglu, who's never qualified out of the top 4 in top 2 in 4 editions of the Czech round here in Most, goes provisionally pole once again with his 2nd effort now, a 1 minute 30.450.
Yeah, and you can see for Toprak there, half second faster than anything we've had so far this weekend, about 4/10 off that lap record. You can see here for Jonathan Ray that with Ryan Vickers, Axel Bassani able to use that slipstream there to attack him down straight as well. So for Jonathan, you're a second off and Bassani down at turn 1, and such an easy place for that to happen as you come across the track there. We see a lot of incidents through that section of the track, but again, those yellow flags come out, and anyone that's trying to start a new lap, they'll just come straight back into the pits.
A couple of riders just coming through to complete their first flying laps here. They will be able to get those done before hitting that yellow flag at turn 1. Alex Lowe's and Sam Lowe's haven't yet set their first flying laps, and just coming through the final sector now as we see again that spill into turn 1.
Yeah, you can see there for Bassani, you can only be that couple of meters too deep into that corner, and it just pushes you into the wrong place. You've just got too much momentum to try and get the bike stopped into there, and easy to have those crashes through that section.
Alex Lowe's climbed to P4, Sam Lowe's up into P7, so the only rider now not to have set a time of the big guns is this man Nicolo Bullica, our most recent pole sitter. Topped the timesheets at the Italian round by 2/10 of a second, current leader of the Superpole award. hasn't qualified out of the top 2 places this season. Beaten only by Razgat Lioglu in Portimao and Sam Lowe's in Assen. On paper, it should be between Bulliger and Razgat Lioglu here, and it is Razgat Lioglu Bulliger 1-2 as Nicolo Bulliger with his first flying lap goes P2, 0.2 of a second down on Top Rack, and that's a strong effort from Nicolo Bulliger.
Yeah, and you can see again though we're doing those longer stints, so 3 flying laps there for Top Rack at the start of the session, and we don't tend to see this in the Superpole session just because we got that harder tyre.
Top Rack Razgat Lioglu among the top 10 all-time qualifiers in World SBK with 42 front row starts to his name, 6 consecutive front row starts, although was less than a tenth ahead of Bassani and Bautista in Assen, 2/10 ahead of Bautista in Cremona, and only 1 pole position in 2025 so far for Top Rack. He had 6 poles, remember, last season. Hasn't been quite as strong for single lap pace as he was last year, but here in Most he has been the man to beat all weekend long.
You can see all these riders just about to come into the pits to end their first stint. Scott Redding managed to get himself out there. He's out trying to set some sort of representative time. We saw him leave the pits at the start of the session and have to come back into pit lane, so Scott Redding out there on his first flying lap. He's the only rider out there on a decent lap right now.
Scott Redding third on the grid here in Most in 2021, qualified 11th place last year. That of course was on the BMW, but Redding with just 1 top 10 effort in Superpole this season so far. 4th row of the grid for him last time out in Cremona, P6, his best in 2025 since his return to Ducati machinery. So Redding just making his way now through the final sector. It's not going to be a great lap by the looks of it, this one. He's 1.5 seconds down after 3 sectors already, but just to get something on the board and then try and make some progress in the second stint later on. He is the only rider still on track, and Scott Redding driving towards the line. Let's see where this first effort puts him, ahead of Rabat, Vickers and Zaidi, as well as Mackenzie, who of course we saw crash out earlier on and hasn't completed a lap. So not the greatest of starts for Scott Redding, down in 18th place, but there are still 7 minutes remaining in Superpole.
Yeah, the unfortunate reality for Scott as well is that's only 1/10 of a second slower than his fastest lap of the weekend so far. So for Redding, it really hasn't clicked into place around Most, one of his better circuits for the season as well, and he needs a good result.
Yeah, it's not the best of situations at the moment for Bonovo with their star acquisition for this season, let's say, on the move to Ducati machinery, and so far that's not going too well. Danilo Petrucci just making his way down pit lane and through turn 1, so he's going to be the first rider now to spark the second stint with 6.5 minutes to go as we watch Top Rack Razgat Lioglu at his favourite area of the circuit. It is the corner with the highest brake pressures of the season, and Top Rack has made it his own here in Most.
For some reason it suits Top Rack.
I wonder why.
What's quite interesting for Top Rack is the into turn 10 he's really strong as well. That's where we've seen him try different moves in the past just by throwing the bike down the inside of people, but he does a good job to be able to get the bike turned in that first sector, because that's where the Ducati is really strong. The big physical changes of direction in that section of the track, it's just a little bit more nimble on the Ducati compared to what you have on the likes of the BMW.
So the first stint completed, 6 minutes remaining in Superpole. Top Rack Razgat Lioglu leads the way, 2/10 of a second ahead of Nicolo Bulliger. Danilo Petrucci third fastest. They've got a gap of almost 3/10 of a second behind them to the 3 riders on the second row provisionally of the grid, Andrea Locatelli, Alex Lowe's and Ika Lecuona. But from Locatelli all the way down to Garrett Gerloff currently in P12, there's just 3/10 of a second, so positions can be easily won and lost in that group. Locatelli, Lowe's, Lecuona, Bautista at the moment P7 with Sam Lowe's alongside him, and Xavi Vierge completing that third row of the grid. Other riders to watch out for further down the order: Jonathan Ray at the moment 14th, Michael van der Mark in 15th, and Scott Redding, we've already talked about him, he's currently in 18th place as Danilo Petrucci gets underway with the first flying lap of his second stint here with 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, and this is into that heavy braking zone in towards turn 1. You can see a few riders leaving the pits, and probably distracted Danilo a little bit there, and he's ran in a bit too hot into turn 1, so that's going to be this lap done, but he'll have the chance to be able to maybe use one of those other riders for a bit of a tow down the straight on his next flying lap, but he's not going to make an improvement now.
Top Rack Razgat Lioglu now making his way out onto the circuit with his teammate Michael van der Mark directly behind him on track, and it's van der Mark who needs to make some progress here. P15 at the moment, 1.1 seconds down on P1, so again small margins right the way through the field.
And that's why van der Mark's behind Top Rack as well. Usually you'll see it where the teammates will pair up with each other and one tow the other around for each their lap, but BMW need Mikey to make that step forward from 15, so it looks like the decision's being made where Top Rack's feeling comfortable and confident enough out there where he'll help Mikey on both of his flying laps.
Nicola Bulliger, fourth on the grid here in Most last season. It's one of only 2 venues that he's visited in World SBK, but hasn't made the front row. He generally has been a strong qualifier. This is Axel Bassani's battered Bemotor being repaired as swiftly as possible. He sits in P10, so at the front of the 4th row of the grid as things stand. Of course, had a brilliant Superpole, didn't he, in Assen, putting out on the 2nd row. Remains to be seen whether the team can get that bike fixed and in shape in time for him to get out on track and at least try and get one more lap in at the end of this Superpole session, because there are riders behind him who might hope to leapfrog hit Bassani here. He is at risk of dropping further down the order. We're watching Danilo Petrucci, and what is the 2nd flying lap of this stint for him, but effectively becomes the 1st, and all of the good work of being the first rider out onto track was totally undone there. Petrucci now up and running.
Yeah, and Daniel now just giving himself a chance to be able to get through that first sector pretty cleanly. We'll see what his split is, and very competitive there up against Top Rack's time.
Jonathan Ray on a good improved lap here. He's half a second down at the halfway mark with 2 sectors remaining. 14th position at present. I think top 10 is realistically probably the target for Jonathan Ray, who qualified all the way down in P17 in Cremona last time out. Had an average Superpole performance of only P10 last season. Never really got to grips with the Yamaha, and of course recovering from injury in only his 2nd round back from that foot injury. Jonathan Ray just coming through the final sector. He'll be the first of the big names to get to the line to complete their flying lap. We're of course once again watching Danilo Petrucci. Has had great visits to Most in the past. Jonathan Ray crossing the line, loses ground in that final sector. 1 minute 31.445 for Ray, so it's very similar to the first flying lap he put in the first stint.
Yeah, lost a bit of time in the first sector and then matched his times from the first stint, but still has time for another 2 laps here on this tyre.
Sorry, Steve. Garrett Gerloff on a great lap here, making his way through the final sector. Danilo Petrucci in front of him on track. Petrucci currently sits in P3, might challenge Nicolo Bulliger with this effort. He's close, but not quite close enough. But Garrett Gerloff up to P4. Barney Ducati celebrating the lap from Petrucci, but for Gerloff, that's fantastic. Up onto the 2nd row of the grid. Been a generally miserable campaign for him thus far this season, but he has always qualified between 5th and 8th in his 4 visits here to Most. Crossing line, Ika Lecuona will displace Gerloff down to 6th position. So your new grid with 1.5 minutes remaining. Razgatlioglu, Bulliger and Petrucci. Lecuona for Honda, Gardner and Gerloff. Locatelli, Alex Lowe's and Alvaro Bautista. Now Alex Lowe's, Alvaro Bautista and Sam Lowe's at the front of this group here, making their way to the line, all looking to improve. Alex Lowe's moves up into 4th position. Sam Lowe's, it's only 8th place for him, and he's now bumped back to 9th by Jari Montella, moving up into P7. New personal best effort from the 2 Aruba bikes. Nicolo Bulliger now less than a 10th of a second away from Toprak Razgatlioglu. Still 1 minute till the checkered flag falls, and Alvaro Bautista's new personal best is only good enough for P10.
Yeah, for Bautista, needs to make that big step forward. The last lap of this session is going to be interesting to see what Bautista can do, what Sam Lowe's can do as well, and see if anyone else can make that a step forward. If they need Van der Mark, doesn't look like he's going to do it. He's going to qualify down there in that 5th row of the grid.
Alvaro Bautista with Andrea Locatelli for company at the moment. Locatelli down in 11th place, hoping to climb from there. Big moment there from Alvaro Bautista. I think he might have even gone across the grass there as he tries to find some extra speed, and that's not going to be the way to do it. He's now 8/10 of a second down on this latest lap.
This is important right now. You can see Bulliger at the halfway stage. He's found a bit of time. Toprak's on course for a really good lap. Sam Lowe's trying to move up in the 3rd row of the grid. This 3rd sector important for him. He's very strong in that final sector in particular. Yesterday and this morning session, he was able to set a pace in those sectors.
Might be a bit of a problem for him in the final sector though, because as far as we've been advised, that Taz McKenzie's gone down at the final turn, and so until that's cleared, that's going to mean a yellow flag. And the 14 bike's going to be the first to come into it now. The 11 of Bulliger behind him, so Bulliger's opportunity to improve and challenge Toprak Razgatlioglu is over. Locatelli just coming into that yellow flag zone, so this lap is not going to count for him, nor for Vickers. In fact, still the yellow flag is out there, so that's going to affect Toprak Razgatlioglu as well. So Bulliger and Razgatlioglu, Toprak with a super lap there, 1 minute 29.799 would be a new lap record, but it's going to be deleted for yellow flag infringement in the final sector.
It won't matter for Toprak though, because Bulliger will lose his time as well. Sam Lowe's will lose his time, and that'll be a case of all those riders just dropping those spots down. Toprak, there's a bit of frustration there for him. He doesn't realise that the other riders are going to be pinged for those yellow flags as well.
Yeah, Toprak's looking very, very frustrated, but Bulliger's lap, as you say, will equally be affected. So on their fastest and on their second fastest lap, Toprak was ahead on both measures.
Yeah, half a second in this, and he was up by a few hundredths of a second as well. But 2 crashes for Taz McKenzie in the session, and unfortunately for Taz, it's going to lead to him qualifying right down there at the back of the field. This is the incident for McKenzie. You'd imagine it's going to be the same as what we saw yesterday, where riders just lose the front, and it'll end up being a pretty expensive crash for MIE Honda. And you can see for Taz there, a little bit of a roll, but hopefully he's okay. It was good to see that he was able just to walk away from it. This is going to be Toprak's frustration as he comes across the line.
He'll be a darn sight happier when they tell him he's still got pole. It was a fast lap from Toprak. That's probably why he'll be so disappointed that it's going to be deleted. Bad news, obviously, for the MIE bikes. They'll be starting at the back. Zaidi outside the qualifying time, actually, in that session once again.
The big loser, and it's going to be Sam Lowe's going from the second row of the grid, the front to the second row of the grid to the back of the third row.
Yeah, we'll wait for all of those times to be deleted and then see exactly where things stack up. Your memory is certainly better than mine, Steve. So we'll just give it a minute and then we'll give you the full rundown. But we know that your top 2 is going to be Toprak, Razgatlioglu and Nicolo Bulliger, that's for sure.
Just to look at the big disappointments from the session as well, like Locatelli on the 4th row of the grid, and you know, you're only 0.6 of a second off the pace, but those 0.6 of a second, they just carved out to so many spots on the grid. Remy Gardner put in a good lap at the end. We'll wait and see whether or not it was with yellow flags. I think he might have got in just before the yellow flag came out for Taz.
Yes, our timing screen is almost going entirely blue, isn't it, with your deleted laps on the last lap around there. Petrucci's last lap looks like was okay, Lecuona and Gardner as well. So everyone's being held while we just wait for confirmation of your finishing positions. We're quite sure, though, that your front row is settled. Razgatlioglu, Bulliger and Petrucci. And in fact, that is now confirmed. So Razgatlioglu, Bulliger, Petrucci is your top 3. Another great Superpole here in Most for Danilo Petrucci. It's always been a good venue for him. And that puts him right in the mix for a place on the front row a place among the podium contenders, starting from the front row of the grid. I got there in the end. Toprak, Razgatlioglu and Nicolo Bulliger, your top 2 in the championship. Once again, your top 2 in Superpole there.
Yeah, and you can see for Toprak, it's a bit of relief there at the end of it, but Bulliger gets off the bike there. A little bit ginger compared to normal for Bulliger after yesterday's crash, but super effort by him in the Superpole session to put it up there in the middle of the front row of the grid. Toprak does have a little bit of an advantage in terms of his speed over everyone else. Half a second faster on that lap that got deleted for him.
Yeah, superb from him. Danilo Petrucci, 7th front row start in World SBK, his 2nd of this season. He was 3rd on the grid, remember, in Portimao, but that's really important for Petrucci. We saw him qualify down in 13th place last time out in Cremona, venue where he had 3 wins, of course, last season. Qualifying that far back left him in real trouble for the remainder of the round. He's right back in the mix this weekend. See him celebrating with the team.
A lot of hand slaps there from the BMW guys to Danilo as well.
Don't start things, Steve.
I didn't say nothing.
Toprak Razgatlioglu by less than a 1/10 of a second ahead of Nicolo Bulliger. Danilo Petrucci 2/10 back from Toprak in P3. 2nd row of the grid, Alex Lowe's, Iker Lecuona and Remy Gardner. Good effort that from Gardner, up ahead of Andrea Locatelli, who qualifies down in P11. And for Alvaro Bautista, P10. That's his worst Superpole effort of this season. A lot of work to do from there.
Yeah, and the Superpole race in particular is going to be a tough one for the riders down that order. The start of the race now this afternoon, obviously you've got your heavy braking into turn 1. We saw last year, if you're in that mid-pack, it's very easy to be picked up by someone else's instant.
Yeah, don't we know it for Alvaro Bautista as well, of course, famously here in Most. For Bautista, well, it's never been the best of venues for him in Superpole. His average just 9th on the grid at this venue, and still never made the front row here at the Czech ground. So he's going to have to do it the way he always does here at the Autodrome, and that's working his way through.
Yeah, I should say as well, obviously the yellow flags and different incidents during the session, but Yari Montella putting up on the 3rd row of the grid, a really good effort from him, and 2 Barney bikes in the top 7. Barney will be pretty pleased with that.
Yes, Yari Montella, whose previous best Superpoles were 12th places in Portimao and Assen, and his first World SBK campaign, 3rd row of the grid.